Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Spencer Spraggins, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this poetry event on behalf of the Poetry Society of Virginia and Germanna Community College. We are so grateful to both of those entities for hosting this, and we are thrilled that you all have taken time out of your busy schedules to devote some hours to poetic endeavors. We are quite lucky to have Mrs. Igloria with us this evening. She's originally from Baguio, Philippines, and she's the award-winning author of Maps for Migrants and Ghosts. The Buddha wonders if she is having a midlife crisis, and 12 other books. Mrs. Igloria was the inaugural recipient of the UK's 2015 Resurgence Poetry Prize, the world's first major award for eco-poetry. She is a Louis I. Jaffe Professor of English and Creative Writing in the MFA program at Old Dominion University. In July 2020, she was appointed Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I won't keep you long. I'll read just a few things, and then just before the 7 o'clock mark, I'll turn it over. But I've been writing a lot of poems in form, sometimes loosely, often loosely, because I've been teaching these forms in a craft of poetry class with undergraduates this semester, and I think I'm starting to feel like I have been successful in not making them afraid of form anymore, because I've given them an exercise where I invite them to think about an everyday form which they feel like they are sort of expert on, and share that with us. So they do presentations on everyday form. And then I invite them to kind of make connections to, okay, you know this thing so well, you can do hacks and everything. You can do this in your sleep. How can you connect that to what we do as poets? So they're having some fun now with that. And I'm really getting some great presentations. Anyway, so among the things poetry promises is transport, which is perhaps another way to describe that what we do when we try to first take our first steps toward that place of feeling and understanding. And maybe sometimes form helps me to get there because it gives me a little bit of restraints to work against. Uh, at the same time, I'm also looking for ways to open the given to something else, some other possibility. So I'm going to read some haibun, which is the prose poem. It's a Japanese form, which has a prose section at the top. Sometimes it's reversed, but they've got to be together with a haiku at the bottom. So it's been described by the great poet Amy Nizuko Matatil as something like, a prose paragraph that is perched atop a little bowl of the haiku. So, and I wrote this one sometime in September of last year when I started feeling really bothered by the fact that people were always saying things like, I wish things would go back to normal, as if we know what that is, as if normal is possible. And so it has some lines that kind of echo our feelings about living in this pandemic. You say you need the world to be the world again. What wounds, what overgrown fields and blunted plows, what skies dangling with free fall of blasted birds, what broken shelves of mountains on which Markhor have left behind their winter coats, their spiraled horns. What towns of smoke and elegy of 9 a.m. shadow. What strange noons of orange fog, an acreage of embers sparking into fire. The moon keeps a tally on its chipped marble whiteboard. Each plank of hewn and stolen wood, each pod of pilot whales and porpoises, their effort to steer out of boiled salt water to strand upon the coast. And you, mouth that did not eat of soups with sea turtle eggs and pangolin flesh, that did not tear the joints off button quail roasted on bamboo spits, that did not dip a spoon into stews of elk, yet you dressed your skin in velvet and let them dwindle into abandoned shells, sink like rusted vessels. Always at dusk, the ancestors visit. Their wings cleave air you find increasingly hard to breathe. What wounds, what fingerprints you've left on every surface, hard as diamond points, scattershot trails visible from thousands of miles above the earth. There's only this moment. Don't call on stars or meteors. Don't speak just to speak. Thank you. I also wrote a couple of ghazals in response to over in the Philippines, the current president launched a so-called drug war. And to make a long story short, everyone who is suspected of either dealing drugs or being involved with drugs is just shot on sight upon orders without being given due process. So I have some pictures at the end of your packet, which I also included, and then maybe you can use them as ekphrastic poetry prompts. But there's one picture from, I think, 2016 of a family grieving a father who had been shot, and he was innocent. So, okay, here is a haibun also. Oh no, let me read a ghazal about that. So let me see. I have a number of things here. Okay, ghazal with rising body count. Newspaper stories of lifeless bodies fished out of the gutter. Too many now every day to number. Their wrists are bound, their mouths sealed with tape. Before they died, who had their number? Along the canals, a rash of deep green vines. Their arms bear yellow flowers, too many to number. At the height of summer, the flowers give way to fruit. The bloated fall, some number. The rest are allowed to live a while, then reaped to assuage hunger. The problem is with hunger that knows no number. The bigger the maw, the bigger the hunger. It won't stop. What can't be satisfied has no belief in limits, in numbers. So the ghazal is another favorite poem form of mine. And I just like the way in which the echoes can be harnessed as another kind of form of repetition. I think in April of this year, there are rising incidents of violence directed at AAPI communities, Asian American Pacific Islander communities. And it's sort of like a resurrection of that old yellow peril idea from, the 1900s, late 1800s, when foreign bodies are ascribed qualities of contagion and filth, and they are pictured in these metaphors that are, of course, xenophobic, as coming in to corrupt the national body. So in April, there was a Filipina woman, a 60-year-old grandmother and mother, who was attacked while walking in Midtown Manhattan on the way to church. So on a Monday morning after Easter. What came first, the hate speech or the attack? A woman walks to church the Monday after Easter. She's wearing a light sweater because at last it feels like it could truly be spring. But who even goes to church anymore on a weekday morning in New York? The immigrant healthcare workers will tell you, the nannies and short order cooks, the 1 a.m. custodial workers, grandmothers who spent years polishing other people's floors on their knees as if before a God who only cares that every surface reflects his many countenances. See the figure that approaches her from left of camera, spitting words we know by now have the power to wrench visible what's usually invisible. Say scourge and it becomes scourge. Say peril. Say it must go or it doesn't belong. See her fall beneath the weight of a boot. Imagine the crack of her pelvis on the pavement, a sound muffled by traffic in its banal passage. Tell me how a woman's sleight of build could save every last penny in a clean pickle jar to put children through college, then copper her with bruises as sudden flowers erupt on her face. A few feet away, 3 doormen shut double glass doors that might have pulled her into quick safety. Across the street, someone is screaming. I don't know what words those might have been. I wasn't there. I'm there, though I wasn't there. Thank you. I want to end on such a down note, but okay. So one last thing, sort of like a lyric poem. My grief is also the white flowers that open at the approach of summer, their musky scent spiraling, spilling, finally, out of petals they cupped so tightly to their hearts until they could no longer. Is magnolia and gardenia, snowbell and japonica, the swill of their breath nearly unbearable in the rising heat, bringing you to the point of nausea? And isn't that the way it is when grief's flask finally unstoppers? How, before any cleansing flood of tears, you reel toward the nearest bush and open. You heave until you are dry, until your insides are completely emptied. And then, it will not matter what the cost, nor what time of day it is, high noon, dusk, or whatever season. For what they brought is the gift of a knowing that will never leave you, now or at the end. Thank you so much.
Oh, Luisa, that's just leaving me breathless. Thank you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
your attention. Thank you for
Are there any questions, final questions for Luisa before we move on to our next readers?
Yeah, Laura, right? No, wait.
Barbara?
Barbara, sorry.
Yes, I just have a quick question as far as where do you get your material from or your inspiration from?
From anything, anywhere. I mean, I feel like poetry is my preferred form of basically processing everything that I'm thinking of or feeling or moving through the world. Some of you might know that I have kept a daily writing practice. I think Patricia knows for, it's gonna be 11 years now in November. I have written at least a poem a day at Via Negativa. Our friend Dave Bonta basically archives them there. I mean, I don't know how to do all that tech. As you can see, I'm even so terrible at things like Zoom, but yeah. So I just basically drop down into that space of writing, find my way there. Not very many expectations of myself. I just really want to clear that space for me so I can have time to engage with language and hope to make my way to a poem.
And just real quickly, I'd like to ask, do you play music or do you have an inspirational spot that you go to that you write in?
Sometimes I play music and I have earphones to do that. I often go to a cafe now that it's okay to do some of that sometimes. It has a nice open space when it's nice, or in the back, I kind of hide away from everybody and wear my mask, of course, but cafe noise doesn't bother me anymore. I can kind of, just drop down anywhere and just kind of tune out. So, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
My question is, what do you think about intertwining or fusing forms? You inspired me earlier with the high burn, as I've written them too, but what's your opinion on fusing forms? I'm fusing like a sestina, a terza, or sometimes people call them haikus, and the villanelle as well.
I'm teaching that too this week in my class. So what is my feeling about using forms, basically?
No, fusing,
Not using?
Fusing, yeah.
Using, you mean?
Fusion. Combining forms.
Combining forms. Yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Well, there's a lot of examples of poets who are very, genius at fusing forms. So I can think of Natasha Trethewey right now, who has written, I think pantums that are also sonnets at the same time. There are in the world, there are terza rima sonnets, of course, that's a little bit more common. And just with all the hybrid energies that are being used by poets today, there's so much that you can play with. I like what you're saying. I like playing with forms in that way too. So go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. I think it's fun.
Any final questions for Luisa? All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you for the wonderful questions, everyone, and being so engaged.
Yes, thank you.